The language and storytelling is so incredibly important, and that comes from authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Of actually growing up on dirt roads, of actually being able to spend time with real people on their back porches and in their kitchens. And when we do that, it helps us to have a better understanding of what's really going on and not just a theoretical conversation in Washington, D.C. about what's needed. It's actually coming from everyday folks
That's right.
sharing about the sets of opportunities that they're looking for and the impacts that are going on.
Well, when we talk about that, we gotta talk about food, man, because right now folks being impacted by the lack of food, right? I mean, the fact that that big beautiful bill, man, we wrote a op-ed on that bill called the Big Bullcrap Bill.
Oh, go ahead. Tell me a little bit about
And the
that.
reason why we call it the Big Bullcrap Bill, how you gonna talk about, you for America, you a patriot, you gonna cut people's benefits, SNAP benefits, right? I mean, you got a lot of people in this country who struggle every day with being able to put food on the table. Everybody doesn't have a grocery store near their community, right? We talk about food deserts, not having access to food. There's another term called food swamps. So that's when you have too many McDonald's, too many Burger Kings. And folks out there listening, that. When you're in your neighborhood, you got that McDonald's, that Burger King, that Popeyes all clustered together. That's a food swamp. Then you look around, where's the grocery store, right? Where's the supermarket? Where's the farmer's market? That's a food swamp. But really, when you think about the food injustice, why some people that have more food infrastructure, like grocery stores, supermarkets, farmers markets, right, and the have-nots don't have it, we call that food apartheid. Now, you think about the apartheid in South Africa. Why is that relevant? Because you have this system of oppression where folks who may be black, who may be brown, who may be low wealth, low income, don't have access to good food. Why isn't America today? You got kids who don't have access to fruits and vegetables. They can't even walk out there in their neighborhood and find a tree that's growing apples, a tree that's growing oranges. Depending on what part of the country, oranges would be more citrus. So I'm talking about Florida, apples, different parts of the country. Some fruits don't grow everywhere, y'all. Just want to let y'all know, right? But what I'm saying is, it's a problem in America today that people are experiencing hunger because they do not have access to healthy, nutritious food. But the president, right, decided in his big bull crap bill, I'm going to cut the SNAP benefits to those folks.
Well, you talked about that. So what we got? 47 million people who are living in poverty right now in our country. We got 42 million folks dealing with SNAP and it being taken away. You talked about systems, and I appreciate when you talk about systems because there's that quote that we both know well that says a system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect.
Exactly. And then an unjust system can't get you justice. We're talking about food injustice because you have an unjust food system. You got kids who go to schools who may not have healthy foods when they go to their school lunch. What's on that lunch tray? What's on that lunch tray may be processed. And then some years ago, a president, I'm gonna name that president, had a grand idea. We're gonna bring vending machines into schools, right? So you brought vending machines in, and those vending machines had unhealthy food items. And then you think about how people are cooking the food in the schools, right? They're preparing it like with grease, fats, right? You have that. And then when the kids go home, because we're in a microwave world right now, and also their parents may be working 1 or 2 jobs, they may not have time to cook. They may not get a healthy. We're supposed to eat 3 meals a day. Children may not be getting a healthy meal out of any of those 3 meals a day. So what does that mean when you think about their long-term health outcomes? You think about if you live in a neighborhood where you don't have access to healthy foods, right? And that means maybe that neighborhood also, they don't have sidewalks, they don't have crosswalks. So that's another part of the built environment. So kids can't walk, can't exercise, and they're eating unhealthy food. So that can contribute to high rates of diabetes, right? High rates of obesity. And that can lead to long-term negative health outcomes when they become adults.
When we think about I call it the BBB, because I don't even want to give them the letters or give them the words to actually be able to.
I have a different BBB, but I don't think we're the same BBB.
No, we ain't gonna talk about that.
It's a different conversation. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. But it's interesting because they try and frame things. One, that it is our fault in our communities that we don't have, the nutrition that we need, that we don't have the food that we need, that we should pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But we also understand that there continues to be disinvestment inside of our communities. we should flip it, right? Because we are talking about the impacts that come when you don't have nutrition, when you don't have healthy and accessible food. But you know, earlier we were talking about Booker T. Washington,
Yes, sir.
and we were talking about action.
That's right.
And how we flip the script on these folks. Let's break that down for folks.
Let's talk about Booker T, y'all. So many of y'all, listening, the folks out there, y'all may not know Booker T. Washington. He established what? The Tuskegee Institute, right? Which is now the Tuskegee University, right? You know the famous George Washington Carver. You know, y'all know, I'm gonna call him Mr. Peanut. He was also at Tuskegee. But Booker T was really all about self-sufficiency and economic empowerment. And we talking about making sure we were connected to the land and growing our own food. So in this moment, where people losing their SNAP benefits, when long-term we've had kids who haven't had access to healthy foods, right? I was a kid in Mississippi where, you know, I was in part of the free lunch program. I called it free lunch, but you sing some free lunch bunch, free lunch, but not making fun of it, but it was a serious issue. My parents were on SNAP, were on WIC, right? I remember being in that line, waiting on that, you know, that package, that block of cheese, and going home. And when I was lactose, not intolerant, I'm lactose. And maybe that's what reason why I'm lactose intolerant now. All that cheese I was eating as a kid, right?
Cut the cheese.
For, you know, too much cheese, man, and the bologna sandwiches. That was some good stuff back in Mississippi, back in the 80s, right? Yeah. But getting back to Booker T, we got to be able to grow our own food. So in this moment, we got to make sure that we are investing in communities in a way where folks can grow their own food. Can people do they know how to grow food, right? Do you know how to grow turnips? Do you know how to grow spinach? Do you know how to grow collard greens and mustard greens? You know, do you know how to grow peas, right? Do you know how to grow okra? These are things that for many of us, this is part of our history for black folk, right? You think about, I would like to say, you know, so many people are disconnected from land, right? And I think land is health, land is power. Land is really important it's part of our history, part of our culture. But black folk particularly, we were master agriculturists before enslavement, right? So you got a lot of folks who are disconnected from the land because after, you know, we were freed, right? You think about the Great Migration, folks working the factory jobs, they left that disconnect, they left the land behind, right? And so we don't want to be connected to the land, but that's part of who you are. We came from the soil, we're gonna go back to the soil, right? So I think it's really important for folks to understand, like, we gotta be growing our own food. We gotta have urban gardens, community gardens, right? There's a lot of folks across the country who get that message and who've been growing their own food, but how can we expand that, right? How can we make sure every neighborhood has a food forest? So when a kid walks out, they can pick an apple, they can pick a pear. You know, they can go pick some Muscadines or scuppernongs. Y'all know, those you know that Muscadine wine.
You gotta break down Muscadine for
folks. So this in the fall season, right? When y'all go to the store, y'all see those grapes that, you know, you got your table grapes, your purple grapes, your green grapes, your red grapes, you know, your seedless grapes, you know, seedless, they're in a bunch. You may see these grapes, they're in this bin, right? And they're they're individual grapes. They're not on a stem. The purple ones are called Muscadines. The green ones are called scuppernongs. And so these are really big grapes. They're tasty for country folks like me and Mustafa. We have Muscadines and scuppernongs growing wild in West Virginia, where Mustafa's from, and also in Mississippi, where I'm from. So those are things we got to create food forests, right? But some innovation could be done too. And there are folks who are doing work around hydroponics and aquaponics. Y'all may ask what that is. Basically, you know, you're growing food, growing, you know, tomatoes. You're growing okra, you're growing beans, you're growing Swiss chard, kale, mustard greens. I can name everything. I'm gonna just say this real quick because I know I'm gonna get off subject too much. But I grow stuff in my own house. I got everything but a cow and a chicken in my backyard.
We gonna get you one too.
Yeah, I'm gonna give me some bees too. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, you grow your own food in the soil, right? I have raised beds in my garden, but with hydroponics, you don't need soil. Y'all hear me emphasize that word soil because from Mississippi comes all that soil and oil. But you know, I'm just tripping a little bit. But you need a basically it's a aqua solution. Basically, it's a nutrient solution. So you don't need to have soil to grow food. So in places where you may not have a lot of land, you may be in a lot of concrete and asphalt. You can actually grow food using hydroponics or aquaponics in buildings. You can also have vertical gardening. Say you got a lot of space on your walls. You can also, you see this across the country in New York, and I think in parts of DC and Baltimore, people have green roofs, so they're actually growing food on their roofs. So you think about all the, I'm gonna stop talking, pass the mic to you, but you know, think about all the infrastructure we have. Think about all the roofs we have. Think about all the churches and mosques that we have that could be growing food too. What do you think about that, Mustafa?
I think that food is spiritual. And I think sometimes we don't talk enough about that. So when we have food insecurity, we are also taking away or damaging folks' spirituality, because there is a direct connection between food. And you talked about our history. Why folks brought us to this country was because of our expertise, but also what came with that was our culture also. What came with that was our connection to something greater than ourselves. Food is alive. And because it is alive, we should honor it and understand what a valuable asset it is to our life, and also how connected we are. Food also speaks to the mental aspect, right? It's about dignity as well. When you can grow your own food, you see something that you played a role in helping to nourish, and it nourishes you back. And sometimes we get caught up through these preservatives and these processes that people have in place that breaks that connection. So that's why I appreciate when I see folks, you know, in community gardens, you see that reconnection that's happening there. And when we have those moments, it's just transformational. And when I see you also growing and seeing how excited you get about that, that's something that's special as well.
Dude, I could talk about food all day, man. I mean, I love food. I love to eat. I think all of us love to eat. You know, it is really important for us to make sure that we spread that message.
Let's talk about this as well. You know, so we understand that there are all these amazing folks who have food gardens, folks who are focusing on making sure that we are addressing these broken systems that are in place. Let's just have a hypothetical for a moment. If you had $1 million, how would you want to invest that to actually help to make change happen?
I think if I had $1 million, I don't know. I think I'd go to Vegas. But you know, that's not the question.
Free food in Vegas.
That's not the question that you asked. So if I had $1 million, you know, I mean, people would elect me to be like mayor. I'm like, mayor, what town? I mean, maybe mayor of Vicksburg, Mississippi. I'm from Vicksburg. So I'm mayor of Vicksburg, right? I would use that $1 million to invest in making sure that every school, K-12 school in Vicksburg, Mississippi, had a school garden. Because then the kids would learn how to grow their own food. You would bake it into their classes, right? You do workforce development. They're growing their own food, and then you make sure that they grow it and they learn how to cook it. We gotta get back to what's that home ec? Home ec, y'all. Home economics. We gotta move away from the microwave mentality and move back to the mentality of how you grow real food for real people to give them real health, right? And so I think that would be, if I had $1 million, investing in our children. I'm gonna say this to folks out there listening. How you gonna put America first? You gonna put your kids first. Invest in your kids, invest in their schools, put in school gardens, right? That is a way to make sure that our kids can be healthy and can be wealthy and can be wise, right? We gotta start with food. It starts with food, and I think it ends with food, but it starts with our kids, man. We're about to get into some rapid fire questions, so Mustafa, you go ahead.
How should youth get involved?
Youth can get involved in a number of ways. I mean, you think about youth have that energy. They should be out there advocating in the food justice movement. They should be calling their town council. They should be calling their mayor. They can also make sure that if their schools, talking to their PTA and their principal, we want to have a school garden. We want to have healthy foods. They can be advocating for themselves in this moment. So, Mustafa, one thing the average person can do this week.
Realize that you have power, and then translate that power into actually pushing the elected officials where you are to actually begin to make investments in this space, but not just investments, but also to make sure that you're honoring the folks who are doing the work.
Yes, sir.
What's one thing schools can do right now?
I mean, every school should be looking at their food budget. Do they have enough money to actually purchase and bring in healthy fruits and vegetables for their students, for the staff, for the teachers? They can also assess, hey, do we have home economics baked into our curriculum so these young folks know how to cook their own food? Do we have botany classes baked into the curriculum so they can know how to grow their own food? We didn't bring in Booker T. Washington, that genius of Booker T. Every school should make sure Booker T is part of the curriculum and getting back to understanding how, that vision, but how you grow your food and how you build an economy around food, a healthy economy, sustainable economy, an economy that's for the people. Mustafa, one thing you fund if budget wasn't a limit. You had all the money in the world.
I would make sure that black farmers and indigenous farmers had the resources they need to be able to pass the knowledge on and to continue to expand out, the food that they grow and to be able to repurchase the land that was stolen from them.
Yes, sir. Land back. We got to get to that. Okay.
What role should churches or mosques play?
I think churches and mosques are a very important part of the infrastructure, social infrastructure in our communities. So they could be taking the lead as anchor institutions, as hubs, food innovation, food justice, food resilience hubs. They can be providing direct and mutual aid to those citizens, to those residents who don't have food, who are struggling, who lost their job, who've been impacted by the big bullcrap bill, right? Who've lost their SNAP benefits, whose kids are starving. They should be leading in this fight for food justice. Mustafa, one myth about food insecurity you want to stop.
That only black folks are the ones that are being impacted. Yes, we are. But there are working class folks who are also out there who may be from different races who are struggling as well. And that's an opportunity for us to come together in unity through authentic partnerships to actually push against, the folks who are in these local, county, state, and federal positions who don't see us. So we have to make sure that they honor and make sure that they're making change happen.
Yes, sir.
What one thing every city should do tomorrow?
Every city should do tomorrow is to make sure. Oh, did you ever ask me that question?
I did, but it was before we was doing this.
Okay. What did I say?
I'll do it again. Wait in again. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Sacoby, what's one thing that city should do tomorrow?
Every city should make sure every food pantry they have is stocked with food. So our residents who are struggling right now because of losing their SNAP benefits, our kids that are hungry, they have access to food. And another thing, they should be looking at their budget, their city budget, and making sure they're shifting money into their public health infrastructure, and particularly their food infrastructure, because you can't have health without food.
In the wealthiest country in America, no one should be hungry.
That's right. And we got too many people starving right now. So what's the biggest policy fix that would change the most issues?
To make sure that everyday folks are actually the ones that are helping to craft the policy. The people who actually have been hungry, the people who have actually went to a food pantry when there was no longer anything on the shelves, the folks who understand that they watch their babies get sick because they don't have the nutrition they need. We got to get real people back into policy making.
There we go.
Talk is good, action is better. If you enjoyed today's conversation, reach out to your neighbors to make sure you have an understanding of what they're dealing with in relationship to food insecurity.